Welcome to Dwellings, a podcast from the City of San Jose Housing Department, where we talk with thought leaders about ending homelessness, building affordable housing, and key housing policies. I'm Jeff Scott, and I'll be your host for Season 5 of Dwellings. On today's episode, I'm joined by Michael Brio, Deputy Director of the City of San Jose's Department of Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement. We're discussing the Envision San Jose 2040 General Plan. The plan centers on 12 major strategies that support the community's expressed desire to see San Jose grow as a prominent city and provide environmental and economic leadership in our region. Great, Michael. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, hi, I'm Michael Brio. I am the Deputy Director of Citywide Planning for the City of San Jose in the Department of Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement. And I oversee all of the long-range planning for the city, particularly as it relates to land use and development.
So our conversation today is going to focus on the Envision San Jose 2040 General Plan. And as many of our listeners know, every city or most cities have a general plan. But can you explain to us what the purpose is, what the role of a general plan is?
Yeah, so the general plan is a long-range plan for the city that is a plan for how the city is going to grow and navigate change. The changes could be demographic, economic, environmental. So it's a plan for the future of the city. It identifies a vision of what the city wants to become and then has strategies and goals and then policies to achieve the goals and strategies to implement that vision. And it deals with all kinds of stuff. Most commonly, people think it focuses on development and land use, where apartments are going to go, where offices are going to go, etc. But it also, a big part of it is the transportation system and how people get around. It deals with parks and open space. It has service standards for police and fire. It talks about the goals and policies related to arts and culture. So the environment, sustainability, the health of the people in the city. So it's very, very broad. And it's sort of the overarching document for the whole city that touches upon everything that all the different departments in the city do. And it's used by the decision makers when they're making a decision.
Great. Thanks for that explanation. And correct me if I'm wrong, the current general plan was passed by the City Council in 2011. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What time horizon did you contemplate this would be in place for? Did you think this document would be in place until 2040, as the name implies, or did you think it was going to be in place for some shorter period of time?
Yeah, I mean, typically general plans last about 15 years or so. So, I mean, usually when you have a plan, like there was the general plan 2020 before this, that plan did not last to 2020. You're planning for out to the year 2040, but it's not unlikely that you would do another general plan before you hit the year 2040. But this general plan is unique in that it has something that I think is unique for the city of San Jose. We haven't had this before, and I've never heard of another city that has this. We have what's called a 4-year review of the general plan. So we pull together that 40-person task force that developed the general plan. The people may have changed, but it's the same stakeholder groups. And we look at the general plan on major goals. We have a scope of work. We look at what's happening in the world around us in terms of the real estate market, in terms of demographics, the economy, the environment, and do we need to make some changes or adapt or shift based on what's happening. And so because we do that every 4 years, this general plan has stayed much more current and relevant than past general plans. So it does kind of beg the question. I don't think there's a need to update the general plan as quickly as you may otherwise have to if you didn't have this process every 4 years. So it stays a lot more current.
Okay, great. And are there elected officials as part of that stakeholder group that reviews it every 4 years?
There are, yeah, definitely. There's planning commissioners, there's usually at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 council people. There's stakeholders from business, labor, environmental groups, neighborhoods, housing advocates, transportation advocates. It's a wide range of people.
Okay. And I'm glad you mentioned that. You actually touched on a question I was going to ask later, and that is around the pandemic. I think the perception that a lot of people have is that land use requirements may have shifted since the pandemic, I don't know whether that's the case or not, but I think that's a widely held perception. And so do you think that the flexibility you just described, these kind of 4-year look-ins to the general plan, do you think that is helping the city of San Jose address anything that may have shifted due to the pandemic?
Well, it can. The last 4-year review was completed during the pandemic, or at the end of the pandemic. I think we don't really know where we're going to end up completely. So I think I know that there's sort of this thought, well, we don't need all this commercial land anymore. We should just put housing on it. But you do have to be very thoughtful about that because, one, we don't know where we're going to end up. Two, San Jose is a bedroom community, right? So we are the only city over 500,000 people in the United States that's a bedroom community. And so there's sort of 3 effects that causes. One that was very much driving the conversation at the time the plan was prepared was the fiscal issue, the fiscalization of land use. So these are gross generalizations, but housing generally pulls money out of the city's bank account. So it does generate revenue, but the services demanded by residents the cost of the service is greater than the revenue that's generated. Now, that's a gross generalization. There's cases where that does not occur, but generally that's the case. Business and industrial and commercial either is neutral from a fiscal point of view or positive. They don't demand a lot of services, and many of those uses generate money for the city. So that was one of the drivers of this general plan, is making sure we're a balanced city so that the city can provide the services to its residents and business that they desire. So there's that. The other 2 issues related to that, is quality of life and the environment. And I know COVID's kind of twisted that around a little bit, but 51% of the greenhouse gas emissions that are emitted come from transportation, largely vehicle tailpipe emissions. And so, pre-COVID, and it's tossed and turned a little bit, but I think generally it's still true that around 60% of our workforce, their jobs are not in San Jose. Now, some people may be working at home a couple days a week, but their jobs are still, when they go into work, it's not here. So what that means is people are spending a lot of time in cars, and we're emitting a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So becoming a balanced city is about providing jobs in San Jose so people have the opportunity to work closer to where they live. Maybe take transit, maybe walk, maybe ride a bike. Many will still drive, but it's not as far. Related to that is the health issue that the many people that are commuting from here to Mountain View, and it could take 45 minutes to get to Mountain View on certain days, they're sitting in a car in a sedentary environment, and that's not good for your health. And so we have this out of balance. And so the goal is ultimately to be more of a place where people would commute to than people commute out of. Now, the shorter term goal is just to become a balanced city where we have jobs and housing that match each other. So you have to be really thoughtful if we're converting land. And we are planning to convert a lot of commercial land to housing. It's one of our big strategies called the Urban Village Strategy. But you have to be thoughtful about it and how you do it. Because what I like to say is housing is like diamonds. It's forever. Once you convert a site to housing, it'll never convert back to a non-residential use. Now, the other way can happen. We convert non-residential into housing all the time. So you have to really understand where things are going and have a clear picture before you start making that move to permanently shift land to housing.
Okay, great. And just to clarify for the audience, you used the phrase bedroom community. I think what you meant by that is we have a disproportionately large number of residents and a disproportionately small number of jobs in our city. Is that correct?
Yeah, we are the capital. We are the bedroom of Silicon Valley. That's right. This is where the workers live. They don't tend to work here.
Okay. The Envision San Jose 2040 plan focus on 12 main strategies, if memory serves. Can you discuss those strategies that specifically focused on housing? Can you just briefly touch on what those strategies were?
Yeah, so I think that the 2 main strategies would be focused growth and probably the urban village strategy. So when we started the general plan, the approach to the city in the past for accommodating housing, and even not that long ago in the scheme of things, was to turn orchards into track housing. And then it became more taking old industrial properties, often from the Valley of Heart's Delight, canneries and whatnot, and converting them into housing, into new neighborhoods. But there was a lot of green fields and there was a lot of brown fields. In this general plan, the green fields were gone. The last big green field was the Evergreen specific plan in Evergreen, which was orchards, which was redeveloped in the 90s primarily. Some of it happened in the early 2000s. The specific plans we did for conversion of the brown fields, the old industrial areas, those are largely built out. They're done. So the challenge was, and then we have an urban growth boundary around the city that was established. Well, it's been an iterative process. It started, I think, back in the 70s and 80s, and then it became, the people voted on a ballot initiative to solidify it in, I think it was 2000. So you have an urban growth boundary, so we're not growing outside of that boundary anymore. We don't have vacant land anymore. We have literally a handful of vacant properties left. And so all of our land is really well used. We're not Chicago. We don't have these kind of oddball sites that there was a factory on and it's gone. It's just decrepit, or neighborhoods that have fallen apart. And there's maybe 7 townhomes or row houses left. The rest have been torn down. We don't have any of that. So no vacant land, urban growth boundary, pretty much built out. What do you do? Right? And we also have this issue of the jobs housing imbalance. We don't want to just wholesale convert large swaths of land, particularly industrial land, because it's our rarest and most short supply type of land. So what do you do? So the concept was really focusing growth on transit and focusing growth in urban villages. And the idea there was to look at primarily our commercial corridors that are often served by really high quality transit or some transit, and reimagine them. So right now, a lot of our arterials are maybe 4 lanes, 6, 7 lanes of traffic. They have strip malls built in the 50s, 60s, maybe 70s. They're not walkable at all. They're completely car focused. And how do you reimagine them to make a much more mixed use urban fabric where you have housing and employment and have the services you need in your daily life, like a market and maybe laundromat or what all the things that you need, getting a barber shop. How do you have all that stuff in close proximity in a much more urban, denser, mixed-use fabric, not like most cities in the United States before World War II, and to some extent not unlike the downtown area here, so that people can take care of much of their daily needs by traveling a short distance. They may drive, but it's a shorter distance. But they also could walk or bike or take transit. So the approach really was integrating a significant amount of housing in a much denser format than we've seen, for the most part in San Jose, in these urban villages, often in mixed-use development. On the flip side of that, there was a lot of concern by people living in the single-family neighborhoods that was really starting to come from Willow Glen initially, because people were going in and buying single-family houses and they were knocking 3 or 4 houses down and building townhomes. So they were maybe doubling or tripling the density, and there was concern about that. So the approach of this general plan, when it was approved, was that we are going to preserve and protect the single-family neighborhoods. We're going to really grow these urban villages. And it was sort of a grand bargain. And so that's kind of the approach that this general plan has.
Yeah, well, on that, I have heard varying numbers from people depending on their perspective about how little land is available for multifamily or dense housing like apartments. Some people have said that there is as little as 5% of the land in San Jose is zoned for multifamily housing, apartment housing. I don't know what the actual number is. Perhaps you can shed some light on that. But also, just generally, can you address those comments from people who feel that there should be more space allocated for dense housing and that there's not enough space dedicated to dense housing, in their opinion?
Yeah, I think it's 93% of the land is dedicated to single family. The other 7% or so is multifamily. So I think, just stepping back into some historical context, San Jose is a city that developed after World War II, in the era of General Motors and track housing and strip malls. So we were developed after Levittown was developed in New York, right? So what the concept was, you take the approach of building a Model T Ford, where you have an assembly line, it's cheap, you build them fast. They took the Model T Ford assembly approach to building housing. But instead of the houses moving down the assembly line, that stayed put and the workers moved down the assembly line. So this city was built as largely track housing. And they churned over farmland and they put in these relatively inexpensive homes. That land, a lot of our land got gobbled up by single-family homes, and we weren't left with much over when we were done. And that's kind of the reality. So I think, but that being said, you can squeeze a lot more units on the higher density land. I think the question right now, San Jose is a city of single family mainly, and then focusing high density in these urban villages and downtown, and to some extent in North San Jose too, to some extent. And there's really not much in between. Single family, you can rent a house, you can buy a house if you're lucky. Most people can't. Maybe you rent a house, get roommates or whatever, or you live in an apartment. There's really nothing in between. So I think what I should mention is right now that the higher density, or I don't know if you call it high density, the 5, 6, 7-story stuff, buildings, some would call that high density, others call that medium density. But where we are in the current marketplace is that for even pre-COVID, that type of development does not pencil out because of really the cost of construction, cost of labor, then the cost of materials came along after that, and now interest rates have made that type of development not feasible anywhere in San Jose. I think so that so even though the rents are still really high and people are like, I can't afford, that's crazy, I'm going to move to Texas, the rents are not high enough to compensate for the really high cost of development. We think that will change in a few years, but that's where we've been since even in the year or two before COVID. So it's not just a COVID thing, this has happened pre-COVID. But I think the big question mark related to housing is we've got that 93% single family, the 7% high density. Where do we have land for that missing in-between density, that between the 7-story building and the 1-story single-family ranch house built in 1957? Where is that? And that's going to be the challenge that the nut we have to crack going forward. Where can we allow 8-plexes and 10-plex apartments, not unlike they built in the 50s and 60s, duplexes, townhomes, that type of development that is puts opportunities for small people to become developers and start to provide housing in the city, and not just big, huge corporate, Wall Street finance developers. So, and we've had studies that have shown, we have to update them and see where we're at right now. But a few years ago, we did a study that showed that if you build that missing middle, some of those products become less expensive, and some of them really become affordable to people that have moderate incomes without government subsidy, because we're not going to solve the housing crisis by trying to subsidize our way out of it. There's not enough subsidy to do that. So that's another nut we have to crack.
In the general plan, is any distinction made between zoning for affordable housing and zoning for other types of housing, or is housing generally what you zone for?
So I'd say housing generally we're agnostic generally on whether it's affordable or market rate. However, that being said, there's two things I want to mention. So one, in one of those 4-year reviews that we did an update with the task force, we changed some of the policies or rules that allow affordable housing to go ahead of market rate development in places that market rate development also cannot go. So, and the reason we did that, we gave affordable a chance to develop where market rate can't, was we wanted to give more opportunities for affordable, so that they had opportunities to buy land at a lower value, perhaps, if they're competing with a market rate developer. Now, not right now, things are all upside down. But in a normal market, the market rate developers will pay a lot more for the land, and it makes it harder for affordable housing developers to make the project work for them financially, or they need a lot more subsidy, or so the idea was to give these opportunities to affordable that market rate didn't have, so they weren't competing against each other. So we do have that, and then in North San Jose, we have these zones that we set up that are they're overlays. So North San Jose, for the most part, is planned for industrial uses. It's actually office, R&D, industrial. But there are these overlays in North San Jose where you can also do housing. But we have these two overlays. One overlay is 100% affordable. So you can do housing, but if you're going to do housing, it's only 100% affordable to low-income people. The other one is a mixed income. So it says you can do housing, but 25% of the units have to be affordable to low income. And it's not, a lot of developers, market rate developers, do not want to build affordable. And these properties are large, so it's more the idea that affordable developer and a market rate developer would partner together to do a project. The affordable would take up 25% of the land or so, right? And then the other 75% would be developed by the market rate developer. So there are different rules. We've provided more opportunities to encourage affordable.
And going back to a couple of the strategies you mentioned that deal with housing, whether they be urban villages or some of these focus areas that you mentioned, do you feel like now, looking back in the last 12 or 13 years since this general plan was passed, do you feel that we're making some good progress and substantial progress on those strategies?
Yeah, I don't feel that we are. I feel that, well, as I kind of already mentioned, much of our planned growth is in that sort of medium high density, the 5, 6, 7-story buildings, and that's been stuck for about 5 years. And I think that will change, but it may be a couple of years before. So as a result of that, we're not seeing as much development as we would have liked in the urban villages or downtown, frankly, or in North San Jose. So where we are seeing a lot of success, which gets back to missing middle, is in ADUs. Now, in terms of numbers, they're not huge. We permit between 450 and 550 units of those ADUs a year. So it's not a lot of units, but they really have taken off. So again, it kind of goes back to the idea of putting opportunities for providing housing or housing development in the hands of the smaller builder or property owner. But yeah, it's been a little disappointing. I think initially we were criticized a lot by requiring too much commercial and a mixed-use project in urban villages. For the most part, we've scaled that back. But then the market changed, and it went to a place where the rents flattened and the costs went skyrocketed. So yeah.
Now, I know in the last couple of years, very recently at the state level, there have been a handful of laws that have been passed to try to cut through some red tape and help developers, especially housing developers, get things built with less, or in some cases almost no red tape, through processes like ministerial review and things of that sort. Based on your experience as a planner, based on your experience here for the city of San Jose, do you think those laws are having the desired effect, or do you think they have the potential to have the desired effect, or do you think that in the end it's really not going to make a huge difference?
Well, so I think the main law that we've had success with is called Senate Bill 35, which provides a streamlined ministerial process for effectively, it's for affordable housing. Technically, it's 50% market rate, 50% affordable, but nobody does that mix. So it's really just for 100% affordable projects. And it's really, the feedback we're getting, we actually have a position funded by Destination Home that just works on projects that include extremely low income units. They're pretty much SB 35 projects. We have other SB 35 projects for lower income, but other income groups, higher income, but lower income. And they're using SB 35. So I would say that's really helped to get those projects entitled and moving. So we've been very We think it's a great bill. We're very supportive of it, and we're very we love it. So it's been great, and so much so that in our housing element, we're proposing to create our own version of that ministerial bill or process for City of San Jose. Not a state law, but a San Jose process, an ordinance that will allow other types of housing to use a ministerial process that can't, that are not eligible for SB 35. So we're doing it. We're going farther than the state. So that's in our work program this coming year. We hope to bring something to council by the end of this calendar year, 2024. The fact there's been so much money for affordable housing has been great. There's been Measure A from the county. We had Measure E. I know Measure E's focus is changing a bit right now, but there was Measure E. And then there's just the regular money that housing has every year. So that's resulted in a lot more affordable housing than we've seen. And right now we're approving more entitlements for affordable than market rate. So and that might be, so it's kind of a reflection of there's more money for affordable right now, and the market rate projects don't pencil out. So, but I have not seen that before.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Just out of curiosity, you're talking about the difficulty of making market rate projects pencil out, and maybe we're not making as much progress in some of our goals as we had hoped. Do you think that is specific to San Jose? Do you think that other smaller cities here in Silicon Valley are experiencing similar challenges? Do you think statewide cities are experiencing similar challenges? Or again, do you think that's specific to San Jose?
Well, I think we're not the only city experiencing that, but it's somewhat unique to San Jose because the rents here are not as high as other places. So keep in mind, construction costs are the same wherever you go in the Bay Area. They're just high. But the rents are different. So I think, generally, it's impacting construction throughout the Bay Area. But the rents are a lot lower relative to the cost of construction here. So we're more impacted. So, we're like the last hired, first fired. I hate to say it. The things start to go a little wonky with the costs and the rents, and San Jose stops first. And then it'll start to come back and start booming north of us up the peninsula, and then at the tail end of that, then what starts to happen here again. And then San Jose is not one marketplace either, or it's different throughout San Jose. So West San Jose, close to the Apple mothership, the rents are higher over there. So while our analysis has shown that projects aren't feasible right now, in a more typical marketplace, or even before COVID when things were kind of getting a little strange, you could still make a project work over there. But in downtown, it was, especially a tower, it was challenging. And in other parts of San Jose, East San Jose, South San Jose, it wasn't going to work. So, yeah. So San Jose there's some commonality, but we are a bit unique.
And now as you look ahead over the next several years with the current general plan still in place, are there milestones that the public should be looking forward to hearing about, seeing? Do you think that there are things on the horizon that will be game changers in terms of land use in general and housing specifically in San Jose?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest game changer, and we already had a conversation and floated a policy proposal on this about 4 years ago under the previous 4-year review. And that is the idea of allowing missing middle in places that it's not currently allowed, those townhomes to maybe small apartment buildings. And I think that was a very difficult conversation. There was a lot of support for that, but there was a lot of opposition and concern because we were talking about allowing up to fourplexes in single-family neighborhood zoning. And then SB 9 came along from the state, and the council said, well, the state did it, we're good, let's move on. And I think it was difficult politically. So, but I do think we need to go back. I think a citywide approach of allowing higher density, or not higher density, but moderate density, gentle density as they call it, in single-family neighborhoods is probably too much to swallow. But still, that being said, are there places that we don't currently allow townhomes and small apartments and duplexes that we could allow. And given that we have very limited employment lands and most of the land is single family, some of that conversation could be allowing some portions of a single family neighborhood that abut an arterial, that are sort of that transition between higher density urban village and lower density. Are those some places that these type of housing products, that missing middle housing, could be allowed? So that's something that it is coming. It's not proposed to be a citywide approach. Most neighborhoods, we would not even propose anything there, but it is something we're looking at. We are doing more urban village plans. Our focus has been on West San Jose, where the market is stronger and likely to return sooner for market rate housing. The other big thing is, again, looking at how we can provide a ministerial approval process, streamlined process for more housing types. Maybe it could be market rate housing entirely. It could be market rate that provides some level of affordability consistent with our inclusionary housing ordinance. Not sure we're going to land, but it would open up more opportunities for streamlining than currently is available to housing development.
Well, thanks, Michael. Thanks for sharing all this information. I've found it extremely enlightening. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything else you want our audience to know about the Envision San Jose 2040 General Plan, or anything about the planning process?
No, I would say, I just want to say the city is very innovative when it comes to planning, and we are often leading the charge in a lot of things. If people are interested in this, I would encourage them to get involved. When we do an urban village plan, when we're doing policy initiatives, you can check our website. There's usually there should be information on there how you can keep informed and stuff, but we welcome people to be part of the dialogue and sort of crafting the future of San Jose. It shouldn't just be us wonky planners in the third floor doing this in a room. I think the more people that get involved, the better the outcome. And the more people of many different backgrounds. We really want to get people from all of our diverse backgrounds involved in this decision making.
Thanks so much, Michael, for joining me on today's episode. Thanks for listening to Dwellings, the City of San Jose Housing Department podcast. Our theme music is Speed City, composed and performed by Attain Charles. Thanks to San Jose Jazz for letting us use their music. If you like the show, please subscribe and share with your friends and family. If you're looking for more ways to help address housing and homelessness issues in San Jose, please check out the show notes. You can follow the Housing Department on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SJ City Housing. And if you have questions or comments about today's episode, please send them to housingcoms@sanjoseca.gov. The artwork on our website was created by Chelsea Palacio. Dwellings is produced by me, Jeff Scott, and Jose Chavez of the Housing Department.